Previously on page 859 of chapter 36, society in the contemporary period was undergoing many political changes. When World War II ended, it left the Soviet Union and the US without a common enemy. As their post-war plans clashed, the Allies began to dissolve. For example, the conflicting economic structures of capitalism and communism led to the development of the Cold War. As tensions intensified, Churchill's declaration of the Iron Curtain in 1946 marked the start of the Cold War. Conflict was further complicated by pacts like NATO and the Warsaw Pact to compete for more control over nations recovering from World War II. As the Cold War escalated, the development of the nuclear arms race gave way to the space race, where the US and USSR competed over space domination. The space race would lead to important achievements between the US and the Soviet Union, fueled by their competition.
Which brings us to...
Kayla, Kidman, how's that rocket going?
Oh, well, look what happened to our last rocket.
What happened to Audrey?
Need some inspiration.
The
space race!
We can take some of their ideas for our rocket. I wonder what were some of the important accomplishments achieved by the Soviet Union during the space race.
I think I have some resources on the space race. Let's take a look at them.
What's this book?
That's The Space Race by Nathan Asang. However, the author's point of view takes away some trustworthiness because the writer isn't specialized in the field.
I think we can still use it, but we need more ideas. What about this book, In the Shadow of the Moon by Amy Sherrick?
Didn't she study in children's literature?
Yeah, so she loses some credibility since her target audience is kids, meaning she may have exaggerated, as her purpose is to appeal to her audience and increase sales.
Look what I found, the space race timeline.
Yeah, but the author's purpose takes away some credibility since the organization doesn't specifically focus on the Soviets' role in the space race.
I also found this, the dog that did not bark during the night.
Yeah, the author's point of view seems credible enough. He teaches the history of technology and European history at a university.
I think we have all the sources we need to research.
To sum up everything we researched, some major achievements by the USSR were Sputnik, Laika the dog, and Yuri Gagarin. The USSR would take German Nazi knowledge on missiles called the V-2 and base their new rockets like the R-7 on its model.
Yeah, the Soviet Union was the first nation to send a man-made object into space using the R-7 rocket. When you think about the first satellite, you might expect fancy cutting-edge technology, but Sputnik was more like a snazzy jazzy ball in space that beeped. Some might even compare it to, say, an aluminum basketball.
After the success of the first satellite Sputnik, the Soviet Union decided they wanted more. Their next goal was to send a life form up to space. While the US used monkeys, the Soviet Union used dogs. Don't know which one's worse.
Wait, how many dogs?
Over 20, and they had an 85% death rate.
Not cool. Guys, aren't you sending my dog into space?
Don't worry, we'll learn from their mistake.
The most notable dog would be Laika, the first life form sent to space by the USSR through Sputnik 2. She got cooked in the spaceship within a couple of hours, but the news hid it for over 50 years, saying she lasts more than a week. On August 9, 1960, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 5, which carried two dogs, Belka and Strelka, as well as a range of plants. Belka and Strelka became the first animals to survive a trip in space on August 20, 1960, when Sputnik 5 returned to Earth safely.
In 1961, the Soviet Union would accomplish something even more amazing. They would successfully send the first man into space, Yuri Gagarin, in the Vostok 1.
He was thrown up into the atmosphere at the young age of 27. His flight around the world would last 108 minutes. Surprisingly, he didn't explode or turn into a rotisserie chicken.
After this success, the Soviets would later launch more men into space with the Vostok 2, 3, and 4.
Both the Vostok 3 and 4 would log over 1 million miles and show the Soviets' precise coordination.
Additionally, aboard the Vostok 6, Valentina Tereshkova became the first civilian and woman in space, as she spent almost 3 days in space, orbiting the Earth 48 times.
A few years later, Alexei Leonov would be the first man to conduct a spacewalk as he left his spacecraft, the Voskhod 2, for 12 minutes.
Another important achievement by the Soviet Union was their launch of the first space station Salyut on April 19, 1971, which also led to disaster. I think I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Oh yeah, the crew for the space station died due to depressurization after re-entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Wait, so they exploded internally?
Well, that's a way to...
According to Nathan Asang, the space race later fizzled out after NASA achieved the moon landing and the Cold War began to thaw. The Soviet Union and the US decided that cooperation would be better than competition.
In 1975, this new era of U.S.-Soviet cooperation would be marked when U.S. astronauts docked with a Soviet spaceship. The two commanders, Tom Stafford and Alexei Leonov, would then exchange the first international handshake, symbolically signaling the end of the space race.
Anyways, with all this cool stuff, I think we got the inspiration we needed for liftoff.
Go, go, go.